Hello and welcome to the OPT Stage 2 information session. Today we're going to discuss how to compile and mail your OPT application. On your screen you should see the OPT webpage of the International Students and Programs Office. You can always find this webpage by typing OPT.ucsd.edu into your browser. Today we'll be talking about the initial 12 months of OPT. Even if you are in a STEM field, you will not be applying for the 24-month STEM OPT extension at this time. The 24-month STEM OPT extension is an application that eligible students can submit in their final 3 months of the initial 12-month OPT. Think of it this way. The 24-month STEM OPT application is an extension, so you must apply and be approved for the 12-month OPT in order to have something to extend. As you can see, ISPO has broken the OPT timeline into 3 stages. Stage 1 discussed how to request the OPT I-20 from ISPO. Stage 2 discusses how to compile an OPT application and mail the application to USCIS. Stage 3 discusses how to maintain your F1 status while your OPT application is pending with USCIS and how to maintain your F1 status once your OPT application is approved. In this session, we'll only address Stage 2. Okay, let's get started. We'll start with step 1, complete Form I-765 application for employment authorization. Both the OPT application guide and the Form I-765 guide can always be found here on ISPO's OPT webpage. This allows you to reference all the information you need to successfully compile an OPT application day or night. I'm going to open the OPT application guide first. Okay, so the bottom right here shows when the guide was last updated. ISPO will update the guide whenever new guidance comes from USCIS, so you always know that this guide is up to date and accurate. Here's a list of all the required documents for a complete OPT application. However, please note that depending on your specific case, you may need to include additional documents. We'll discuss this in more detail in the I-765 guide. Right now, we'll go through each of these required documents. The G-145 is an optional form that you can include in your OPT application. The form requests that USCIS send the applicant a text or email once the application has been received. Please note that whether you include the G-1145 in your application or not, USCIS will send the receipt notice in the mail. As a reminder, USCIS will send you 3 documents in the mail: the receipt notice to alert you that your application has been received, the approval notice to alert you that your OPT application has been approved, and the employment authorization document or EAD card, which you need in hand to begin employment. The email or text you receive as a result of submitting the G-1145 form does not take the place of any of these documents. However, you will receive the email or text within 1 week typically, whereas you might be waiting 2 to 4 weeks to receive the receipt notice in the mail. The OPT application requires a $410 filing fee. This can be a personal check, a money order, or a cashier's check. The name and address in the top left does not need to match the name of the applicant, nor does it need to be a current address. For example, if you do not have a personal check, but a friend does, your friend could write a check to pay the $410 filing fee, and you could pay your friend back. The check should be made payable to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and you can write in the memo or for section that it is for the I-765 OPT application. ISPO also recommends that you write your CVIS number somewhere on the front of the check in case it gets separated from the OPT application. The Form I-765 is the United States Citizenship and Immigration Services application for employment authorization. The United States Citizenship and Immigration Service is also called USCIS for short. ISPO has created a separate guide for this form, so let's jump to it. Here is the Form I-765 guide. ISPO staff has reviewed USCIS's 27-page instruction guide and created this guide to better assist UCSD students. However, it is still highly recommended that you read the USCIS instruction guide in addition to the ISPO guide. The link can be found here at the top. Right here. There are 4 important things to remember. First, you must fill out the application clearly. The form is mostly form fillable, but not all sections can be typed in. You can either handwrite the entire document in black ink or handwrite some and type some. Just make sure the ink is always black and the writing is legible. Second, the Form I-765 has a Part 6, which is a catch-all for any additional information that wasn't covered in the rest of the application questions. Remember how I said that the list of required documents for an OPT application might not be all of the documents you need to include depending on your case? This is where Part 6 comes in. Depending on your response to some questions in the Form I-765, you may have additional information to disclose, which will be done in Part 6. And you may also need to include evidence to support the information you disclose. This evidence might be a photocopy of a previous passport, for example. ISPO staff have added this blue eye icon anywhere on the Form I-765 where you might need to disclose additional information and include additional evidence. Third, you must disclose any previous employment authorizations. This means if you've ever had CPT or OPT previously, you must disclose this information in Part 6 and include evidence, which is likely in the form of a CPT I-20 photocopy or a photocopy of a previous EAD. At the end of the form, I will review some examples of how to fill out Part 6 and how to include additional evidence. And fourth, according to USCIS instructions, every question must be filled out. If an answer does not apply to you, you must write N/A in the text box or none in the numerical box. Again, this is according to USCIS instructions on which you may review yourself. All right, let's get started on the actual form. The I-765 form is used for many applications in addition to the OPT application, so it is very important that you follow these instructions closely. For Part 1, 1A, mark initial permission to accept employment. For Part 2, 1A, write your legal name exactly as it is written and spaced in your passport. If you do not have a given name, a family name, or a middle name, write N/A. 2A, if you have had other legal names, you will disclose them here. This means if you legally changed your name and had a previous name on a government-issued ID, you need to write down that name here. Also, see the blue eye icon? If you do not write a previous, or if you do write a previously used legal name here, you should also add it to Part 6 and include evidence. If you have not previously had another legal name, write N/A. Okay, Part 2, addresses. This is one of the most important parts on the form. As you can see, there is a U.S. mailing address and a U.S. physical address. Remember how I said that you will receive 3 documents from USCIS, the receipt notice, the approval notice, and the EAD card? All of those documents will be mailed to the address you write in U.S. mailing address. This is an address where you'll be living for the next 3 to 5 months. USCIS typically takes 90 to 120 days to process an EAD card. However, if the processing time goes up, which does happen during busier seasons, you need to make sure you are still at the listed address in order to receive these documents. Therefore, if you know where you'll be living for the next 3 to 5 months, meaning your name is on the lease and on the mailbox of that mailing address, you will write that address in U.S. mailing address. And you'll write N/A in care of, since the address you're writing is your own address. If you do not know where you'll be living for the next 3 to 5 months, you can list a friend or family member's name and address in the U.S. to receive the documents for you. However, this cannot be an on-campus housing address like graduate housing. If you have a friend or family member who lives in the U.S. and has a mailing address where they will be living for the next 3 to 5 months, write their name in the In Care Of section. This means your EAD will be mailed to your friend or family member at their address. You will then write in their exact mailing address. Whether you write your own address or a friend or family member's address, be sure you include the full zip code. You can use the link offered on the left right here to check the extra 4 digits of your zip code. Also, please note that USCIS mail cannot be forwarded. This means that if you write in your own address on the Form I-765 and then you move, but you request the U.S. Postal Service to forward all of your mail will be forwarded to your new location, except the USCIS documents. Government mail cannot be forwarded. Question 6 asks if your current mailing address and your U.S. mailing address are the same. If they are the same, then you'll mark yes, and we'll fill in N/A for all of the physical address sections. If you mark no, then you'll need to fill in all of the physical address sections accordingly. The physical address is where you're living at the very moment that you fill out the I-765. Numbers 8 and 9 are both none, since you do not have any of these numbers. Next, please answer your gender accordingly. As of now, this document only offers 2 options. Also, answer your marital status. And then for number 12, it asks if you have previously filed Form I-765. This question has the blue eye icon. If you have previously applied for OPT, then you would answer yes. 13A asks if you have been issued a Social Security card. Individuals can only receive 1 Social Security number in a lifetime. This section was added to the Form I-765 to allow students who do not have a Social Security number to request it at the same time as they request the EAD card, and to allow students who have been issued a Social Security number to receive a reprinted card if they've lost their card. You'll fill out this section accordingly. For 18A and 18B, it asks for your country of citizenship. If you're a dual citizen, please pay attention to the I icon. Next, answer your place of birth accordingly, and be sure to answer the date of birth with MMDDYYYY format. 21A asks for your I-94 number. You can look this up through the CBP website. This is also a document that is required in your OPT application, so I'll discuss it later on. 21B asks for your most recently issued passport number. There's another I icon here. If you've been issued a new passport recently and have not traveled on it, this means that the passport number of your current passport is likely different than the passport number connected to your I-94 and most recent F-1 visa. For 21D and 21E, answer accordingly. 22 can be found on your I-94, and 23 can be found in your travel history, which you get to through your I-94. There's the I icon here. If your most recent date of entry or your most recent place of entry as recorded on your I-94 and travel history is not accurate, please contact an ISPO advisor. You must have this corrected before applying for OPT. 24 asks for the status of your last arrival to the US, which should be F1 or F1 student. 25 asks for your current immigration status, which should also be F1 or F1 student. 26 asks for your current CVIS ID, which is found on the top left of your I-20. This should have been the same number for your entire academic program. If you took an extended leave from UCSD, received an academic suspension or disqualification, or failed to maintain your F1 status, it is possible you have had more than 1 CVIS ID while at UCSD. If you participated in another academic program prior to UCSD in F1 or J1 status, it is possible you receive another CVIS ID. See the I icon. If you've ever had a different CVIS ID than the CVIS ID you currently have, you'll need to disclose this information. 27 asks for the eligibility category, which means it's asking what you're applying for. You are applying for post-completion OPT, which is the initial 12 months of OPT. The eligibility code for post-completion OPT is C3B. Questions 28 to 30C do not apply to you. You'll answer with NA or with NET. Even if you're in a STEM field, you are not applying for the STEM OPT yet. If you're in a STEM field, you're eligible to apply for STEM OPT during the last 3 months of your initial OPT. The STEM OPT application is a different eligibility category. Part 2, 30D to 30G, you can put N/A. For 31A, put none. 31B, you're going to leave blank. And then for part 3, select 1A, complete the applicant contact information, and then after you print it, you will hand sign in black ink and date. If you do not have an interpreter, all of part 4 will be N/A. And if you do not have a preparer, all of part 5 will also be N/A. Now we're at part 6. ISPO staff added examples of the most common scenarios we see with UCSD students. Some of these scenarios for adding to part 6 might apply to you and some may not. If none of these scenarios apply to you and you have no reason to add additional information to part 6, you'll fill out every section with N/A. I'll go over a couple examples of reasons you may need to include information in part 6 and additional information. First, please read the part 6 instructions up here. Okay, so one example is if you've ever been approved for CPT. This is an example C. You must write what page, part, and item you're referring to. In this case, you're referring to page 3, part 2, and item 26, which asks for your current CVIS ID. You'll write the CVIS ID you had when you participated in CPT, the academic level you were in during your CPT, the CPT authorized dates, and will make note of what type of evidence you're including. Remember, the instructions say that on all evidence, you must write the page number, part number, and item number the evidence is referring to. Another example is if your most recently issued passport is not the passport you last used to enter the U.S. This is in example E. You must write page 3, part 2, item 21B, which refers to the passport number on your most recently issued passport. You'll need to write an explanation of why you have 2 passports. Evidence you include will likely be a copy of your old and your new passport biography pages. Please review all the examples in any case any of them apply to you and consider if there's any additional information you should add in part 6. Okay, back to the OPT application guide. As a reminder, we've discussed the G1145 form, the $410 filing fee, and the form I-765. Next, we'll discuss the OPT I-20. You must include a photocopy, not the original, of your OPT I-20. Be sure you include all 3 pages. Sign and date the first page. You're already familiar with the 5-month window during which USCIS must receive your OPT application. As a reminder, USCIS must receive OPT applications no more than 90 days before program end date and no more than 60 days after program end date. In addition to these application requirements, once you receive the OPT I-20, a new application requirement is added. USCIS must also receive your complete OPT application within 30 days of the date issued on the first page of your OPT I-20. Therefore, it is important to mail your OPT application soon after receiving the OPT I-20. A photocopy of your current passport biography page is required on your OPT application. USCIS has not offered guidance as to whether this must be in color or black and white, so either is fine. Also include a photocopy of your current F-1 visa. Similarly, USCIS has not offered guidance as to whether this must be in color or black and white, so either is fine. It is okay if your visa is expired. If you're a Canadian citizen, you do not need to include an F-1 visa. The I-94 is your travel and re-entry document. You will likely have an electronic version of the I-94 unless you haven't traveled since before April 2013. Be sure you include the copy of the I-94 and not of the travel history page. The travel history page is not a required document for the OPT application. The 2 passport photos follow the same specifications as a typical passport photo required for a passport renewal. Please follow the guidance on the U.S. Department of State webpage. ISPO recommends printing your name and CVIS ID on the back page of the photos in case they're accidentally separated from your application. That completes the OPT application guide, so let's go back to the OPT webpage under stage 2. Before moving on to mailing your application to USCIS, make sure you review common mistakes to avoid. First, make sure you send the current edition of the I-765 from the USCIS website on the day you postmark your application. Also, make sure you signed your I-765 in black ink on page 5. For the check or money order, make sure it is for the correct fee amount, which is currently $410, and made out to U.S. Department of Homeland Security. USCIS changes their fee from time to time, so make sure you check their website. Also, make sure USCIS will receive your application no later than 30 days from when ISPO issued your OPT I-20. It also should be within your 5-month eligibility window. Lastly, make a copy of your entire application for future reference. Okay, the last step details where to mail your OPT application. As a reminder, USCIS must receive your complete OPT application within 30 days of the date of the OPT I-20 and within your 5-month eligibility window. Your OPT application must be mailed to USCIS from within the U.S. Please refer to the USCIS website for where to send your application. It may depend on if you send using regular U.S. postal delivery or if you use express mail delivery. No matter how you send, make sure you track your application. All right, so you've mailed off your OPT application. Now what's next? It's very important that you understand how to continue maintaining your F-1 visa status while your OPT application is pending with USCIS, and how to maintain your F-1 visa status once your OPT application is approved. All of this information can be found under Stage 3, Maintaining F-1 OPT Status. You can also watch the pre-recorded webinar or attend a live session. Thank you for joining.